Hello and welcome to a very brand new podcast. It's, shall we say, a dawn of a new generation for the Inside Podcast Network. We are launching a brand new podcast and we welcome you to it. This is Inside the Microsoft Cloud. And joining me, for those of you who are familiar with the network, as he always does, is Mr. Pete Zerger. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Dan.
How are you?
Doing well. That sounded a bit like a Star Trek intro, I think.
Space. The final frontier. Ah, dear. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Summertime in Texas, heading quickly our direction.
Yes, it's the reverse is true for me, sadly. Although it wasn't too bad today, but what have you been up to lately?
Oh my. Well, it's a lot of preparing for the new podcast. We've been laying out our schedule for a few months in advance, so I think that's a weight off our shoulders. Doing a lot of editing on the Azure IaaS book, which should be out in May. Fingers crossed. Just trying to get through all of those super fun editing cycles that are typical.
Oh, joy.
With the new book, so
yep.
Loving every minute of that. And then, work mixed in there for 10-ish hours a day, so thinking for some long weeks.
Indeed. So let's give everyone a rundown of the new podcast, the new format. Well, I guess the format doesn't really change. I mean, it's still you and I talking tech. But we're splitting things up a bit. Not that we are retiring Inside Central. I guess what we're doing is just sort of rebranding it and repositioning it.
I wanted to start fresh. So I think we can call it what we call it. So we're going to have two weekly. We're going to have a weekly podcast, but we're going to be alternating weeks. So the Inside the Microsoft Cloud podcast will be convening every other week.
Yep.
And we have a new System Center podcast we've spun up called Inside System Center, and that will happen on the alternating weeks. So,
yep.
And there's a lot of thought that's gone into that. At the end of the day, Microsoft's marketing strategy is the Cloud OS. It's Azure, Windows, and System Center, and I really felt like we need to address the big picture. Certainly I'm a System Center guy, you're a System Center guy when we look at what we do in our lives, and we don't want to get away from that. So I think Inside System Center is really important for bringing experts in for that sort of focus.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's very important we take a step back, we look at the big picture, we look at the future, and bring some knowledge to our System Center colleagues, and give the folks that we work with that who do focus on more of the public cloud side of things in Azure. Certainly there are some IT pros that spend a lot of time in Azure that I know these days. There's certainly a lot of developers spending time there. So I think it just opens up the discussion a bit and allows us to put a bit more of a big picture focus in addition to the future focus that we've always tried to bring to the show.
Right. That's a good summarization of where we want to lead the podcast. We should probably point out that this is the first episode, but it won't be too long in between drinks, so to speak, because you and our good mate and fellow MVP Lee Berg will be broadcasting from Ignite. I was about to say TechEd, but Ignite next week.
Indeed, yeah. In fact, Lee is already in Chicago, I see, from the various social media.
Okay. He's already there.
Already underway.
Good. When do you plan to get there?
So I'll actually fly in very early Monday morning.
Okay.
Yeah, my flight leaves at maybe 5 and change in the AM. So,
Right. Was it 2 hours to
yeah, it's
Chicago?
2.5. Yeah, it's
Okay.
a pretty short flight.
Fair enough. All right. So you'll miss the keynote, will you? Or
So I'll actually be over there for about halfway through the keynote. So
okay.
I'll be streaming on my way to the airport. So I believe that the keynote's going to be streaming on Channel 9.
I believe it will be.
Uh,
Yes.
so
Are, are,
I'll
are
pick
we?
it up on the way, and we'll get a summary out
Yep.
pretty quickly of the major announcements.
Now, will you, aside from the work that you'll be doing on this network, will you be doing any live blogging or tweeting or blogging during Ignite? And if so,
Yeah,
where?
so likely a bit of that, yeah. So over at InsideTheMicrosoftCloud.com, which is the blog that we use to support our authoring efforts around Azure and Cloud OS.
Yep.
I'll be doing some live blogging there. Lee and I will meet up. I suspect a couple of times. I've actually gone through the entire Ignite agenda, save those sessions that Jeffrey Snover mentioned to us would be embargoed. That we'd need to find out
Yes.
about those when we arrived.
Yep.
But I've gone through and found all of those key areas where I think we need to focus and been flagging those quickly. I think we're probably 4 months out on the guest list, but I'd like to pop around to the speakers of some of those key areas and grab a few
Yep.
new guests that perhaps we can pull in to discuss some of those key areas.
Yeah, look, and we are hoping to either have some guest panelists come on, or at the very least maybe get Pete to corner them and have a quick 5 or 10 minute stand up. So we're hoping to bring you varied content throughout the course of Ignite, both, as I said, in terms of sit down guests who can sit down with Pete and Lee and talk about all the major announcements and the good things coming out of Ignite, or some pre-recorded interviews, I guess, that fingers crossed Pete might be able to corner a few influential softies and community folks. So
Yeah. I think that's actually not a terribly tall order. There are a lot of folks that I know, and I know you and I have met on the agenda. So I'll definitely be grabbing some of those ad hoc opportunities. And honestly, with the size of this venue, ad hoc is going to be the easy way for us to get to have some of those conversations. And of course, I have quite a few partner and customer meetings mixed in. So a lot of our MVP colleagues are also consultants. So I'll be meeting with them on the business side of the house. I was looking at my meeting schedule, and I think I have something to do every hour.
fun.
Either business or session or podcasting from about 10 a.m. Monday just straight through to Friday afternoon. So it should be a busy week.
So despite the fact that you're not presenting, and despite the fact that you're there, I guess under the Inside Podcast Network moniker, you're still flat out.
Indeed, yeah. So
which is a good thing.
About half a dozen of my Cyrus and colleagues where I work today will be there with me. So and we're an ISV and we're channel focused. So meaning that when we sell software, we work with a partner on all of our deals. So I'll be meeting with a lot of the MVPs that we see at the System Center Universe conferences, our co-presenters there. So as many of those folks are speakers and in some cases business owners, speakers and consultants. So and I noticed not many of our crowd are speaking at this one, but I think that was expected, because of the fact that this was a new conference.
Yeah, and I guess also the fact that there's not a great deal to talk about in terms of any new content for System Center. That there is still content to be discussed around private cloud, but with no major announcements around System Center, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of content. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around private cloud, but with no major announcements around System Center, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of content. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around private cloud, but with no major announcements around System Center, I Yeah, I think it would have been a push. They would have just been rehashing topics from previous conferences.
Yeah, well, and I think this is the normal cadence we can recall all the way back into the Microsoft Management Summit days. That when there were new, very new messages to come out, Microsoft, typically controls that flow from the product team. The folks who built the new feature that
Yep.
they'd like to talk about typically come talk about it year one, and then we spend a year getting familiar with it, and we come back and we start weaving in those best practices, etc., in years 2 and beyond.
Right.
But I do see some of our colleagues. You mentioned private cloud. I see Christian Neese will be talking about WAP, an area where we know he spends a lot of time. So Christian's an MVP in the same group that Dan and I are members of, the Cloud and Data Center. I see Kent and Johan talking about deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Shocking. and our friend from Sweden, Mr. Hedblom, is talking about DPM. So
Right. Okay.
for my money, Johan and Kent are about as good as it gets for deployment, and,
Right.
and certainly Robert and DPM. DPM might be his legal middle name now, if they have middle names in Sweden. So
I haven't looked. Is the Kurt's is theirs more DSC, or is it sort of traditional deployment?
So Kent and Johan are speaking about more traditional deployment. So there are some DSC sessions, but Johan and Kent are MDT config manager. They're old school deployment guys, let's call them.
Yep.
Not to say that that's legacy technology. They're old school deployment guys, right? DSC is the new kid.
Right.
And I see a couple of interesting sessions around DSC. I mean, DSC has been improving incrementally through the various waves, but nothing. I don't think we're going to hear anything groundbreaking unless something pops up in one of those embargoed sessions.
Yep.
And there's actually another conference butting up to the back of this one where you'll hear from several of the MVPs, myself included. So there's a so we've all been to, we just finished the cycle of System Center Universe conferences. So we had Switzerland last fall, we had Universe US in early February, and then we just finished System Center Universe APAC in March.
Yep.
I actually, a couple of weeks after that, stopped off at the largest independent technical conference in the UK, where I spoke 5 times in 6 hours. It was a good time.
Sorry, did you just say 5 times in 6 hours?
I did. So typically when I go to these things, I try to do 2 talks to sort of make it worth the sponsors effort to get us over there. But a couple of the folks at the sponsor of the conference were really busy. I had one session that was kind of full, so they had it repeat. So I volunteered for some extra stuff, and I had a lunchtime session that actually lunchtime sessions always repeat because you lose half your audience to lunch.
Sure.
So 3 unique sessions became 5 unique sessions, but wound up being a really good time. It was a busy day, but when you're repeating 2 sessions, you're really just talking about the same thing you just talked about a moment ago. So it's love and presentations are easier the second time around.
True, and it's still fresh in your mind as well. So.
Indeed. So looking over the list here, we've got a lot of key content I'm interested to talk to you about, but I think you really hit the key here, and that's that there's not going to be a massive amount of new System Center topic matter until we get to next year, and then just a few days on the heels of this conference, we have the MVP virtual conference.
We do.
There are about 20 of us in the IT Pro track, including the likes of Mark Manassi. So they've got a good mix of speakers.
Great.
And subject matter in that. So if you can't go to Ignite, you absolutely need to catch the MVP virtual conference, because those are all going to be very future-focused topics.
Yep.
So I'm going to be talking about automating service delivery. Manasseh's talking about just enough admin. Johan and Kent will be talking about deployment.
You say that
That's
like
that's
it's
going
a
to
bad
become
thing.
a running joke. Hey,
Yes,
what
I
are
know.
Johan and Kent talking about?
Oh dear. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's we certainly don't mean
No,
to disparage.
it's wonderful because they always evolve their talk. So they're frequently talking about the same thing. But I actually download and listen to those talks more often than you might imagine, because I do play with MDT in my own lab environment. Deploying VMs from those just to keep to stay fresh on that. But Johan and Kent, there's something new every time, and some days they show up in a Superman, or sorry, a Batman and Robin shirt, respectively.
Right.
So they keep it interesting. Johan,
never a
they're
dull
always
moment.
talking because we like to hear them talk. They're
Yep.
knowledgeable guys, and they keep it entertaining.
Indeed.
All right, man. Let's get to the heart of it here.
The good stuff.
Yeah, it's all good stuff, man. But let's get to some more good stuff. So we've got Ignite coming up next week. We had Build this week.
This week. Yep, we did.
It's kind of funny. I was working. There were a lot of announcements at Build, and I follow, as you do, I'm sure, a lot of the various technical blogs, etc. One of those is USA Today, and
Okay.
and I got to tell you, USA Today is a technical blogging, a source of technical information.
Yep.
They're a great newspaper, and as a source of technical information, some days they're just a great newspaper. But
Okay.
but I was reading the column over there. They do a lot of consumer stuff. They get into the Microsoft stuff a little bit. But I was reading a quick article last night, and the guy said, "Make no mistake, Microsoft is back." And your back had like 5 A's in it or something.
Right.
And I think he summarized Build very well. So from the mouths of babes, come genius. The guy said, Microsoft just obliterated any reason a developer had not to develop on Azure.
Yep. And Visual Studio, for that matter.
Yeah. So just if you followed the Build hashtag, which was pound BLT win, BLD win.
Yep.
BLD win about every other announcement was HoloLens.
Yeah.
So Microsoft made made their announcement around HoloLens, but they demoed HoloLens in such a way that people were just flabbergasted. You do need to go watch the recording with those demos in it, because it will blow your mind. It's amazing. What I thought was equally impressive was Microsoft pretty quickly tweeted, if you'd like to try a HoloLens, we have hundreds of these devices at the conference.
The thing I liked about that is that a lot of the speculation when Microsoft first announced the HoloLens was the fact that perhaps it was vaporware, and perhaps that this would never see the light of day. And what we've seen through Build is the fact that, well, no, it's not vaporware, because they had literally hundreds of the HoloLens there for developers and everybody else to test out.
Absolutely, yeah. It was very, very real, and the reports I saw were good reports, and by and large, I heard people say, "Hey, it's better than I thought it would be."
Right.
And there were a couple of comments around control here and there. Somebody even tweeted that they had created a hologram in HoloLens. So, I've already got some show notes together here, and I'm building some more as we go. So I'll put the agenda for the MVP virtual conference out there, because I think you all need to catch that.
Yep.
And the next one is the HoloLens demo. You need to catch this.
Yep.
Okay, so I said about every other tweet was HoloLens. So if the even-numbered tweets were HoloLens, the odd-numbered tweets were around Xamarin. So if you wonder, is Microsoft going to win in the cloud in the future? The answer is yes, and there are two reasons behind that. So number one, they're making it ridiculously easy for open source developers to build on Azure.
Yep.
So if you want to run, if you want to run Hadoop, if you want to run, Linux and Unix operating systems, I spoke to some devs at an Azure workshop I gave a few days ago, developing a distributed computing application on Azure using Linux and Scala and Java Enterprise.
Yep.
There's not much you can't do on Azure. So the other reason is Xamarin. So Scott Hanselman from Azure Friday turned me on to Xamarin. So Xamarin is software that allows you to write. So if you're a Visual Studio developer, you can work with Xamarin, but you can write your application one time in C# and run it natively on Windows Phone, on iOS, on Android. So Microsoft, so there's there's a multi-pronged attack here. Microsoft is making it very attractive for everyone to develop on their platform, on their fabric, on their PaaS.
Yep.
And Xamarin is making it easy for Microsoft developers to publish everywhere else.
Yep.
So it's you can spend $250,000 building an app for iOS, and now with Xamarin you could spend $250,000 and have somebody build you an app that runs on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. So
or the other interesting thing is, even beyond that, if you've spent if you've already spent $250,000 on developing an app for iOS, you can now spend 10% of that, maybe at a guess, and port that over to Android, and not just Windows Phone, but Windows on any size device. The whole idea behind universal apps. So the fact that you can now not seamlessly, because it still requires some effort, but the process of porting applications across to other platforms is now significantly made a lot easier.
Depends on your code base, but yeah,
Sure.
That's a really good point. So if you wanted to go back and have a bit of a redo, a refresh, and push out to other platforms. And you know who the big winner in this is, right? It's the Windows Phone platform.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, iOS was much less cool, back in, whatever year it was they announced the iPhone.
2007.
There you go. And I and many other fanboys lined up and cast aside our iPods for an iPhone.
Right.
I may or may not have been that guy that had an iPhone 3.
I had one.
But yeah. So Microsoft purchased Nokia. And if you read about why Microsoft purchased Nokia, they said, this makes it easier for us to write a great operating system for the phone because we now own the platform. So there's no barrier to communication and to sharing with the phone platform team, right? So Stephen R. Covey really lays that out best in the book Speed of Trust. So if you've never, I'm going to go off camera for a second here.
Yeah.
If you're an IT professional working in the business world, here you go. The Speed of Trust. You need to read this book. Great book. But Covey talks about.
Chuck that in the show notes, just quick. Chuck that in the show notes, and we'll make sure we get a link up.
Yeah, you bet. So he talks about the pace of progress and conversations when you don't fully trust someone and how it's sort of hindered, and when a software company is working with a phone company, there's some stuff you keep close to your chest for a little bit longer than you would if the software company were also the phone company.
Right.
So Microsoft made a strategic move there. Xamarin now makes it very, they have provided the easy button for publishing stuff to the Windows, to the Microsoft Store.
Yep.
So we should see, sort of that acceleration of the Microsoft app count in the store that makes it easier for people to buy, this great Windows hardware with ridiculously nice cameras. So.
Yep. Sadly, I mean, you speak of Windows Phone. So as a Windows Phone fanboy, there weren't any major significant announcements out of build in terms of hardware, but a lot of great stuff in terms of software that's coming in Windows 10 for phone. Did you watch the keynote? Did you see the Continuum stuff that they demoed?
Yeah.
That was
So,
that was
Mike,
really.
what did you think?
I actually thought it was very interesting. Um, I can see quite a lot of use case scenarios where you would use it, but is it going to have the processing power that I need to be able to do the work that I want it to do? I think as a productivity solution, and for those that haven't seen it, I do recommend that you go and watch it, but effectively they had a Windows Phone, a piece of hardware that is, I think they called out the fact that it's not a piece of hardware that is readily available. I think it was custom built for the demo, but they were running a version of Windows Phone that was connected up to a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard and to a full 23-inch display via HDMI, and they were able to run a full version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint off the phone onto the display. So from a productivity perspective, purely that sort of handy, quick document editing or whatever else, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, so one of the big announcements there was Microsoft said that they are making it easier for developers to port their Android app codes to Windows 10 and iOS. So separate from Xamarin.
Yes.
Microsoft is making that porting. So Xamarin makes it easy to write. Microsoft making it easy to port.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you want to own the fabric, and at the end of the day, you want to be the place that everybody wants to put wants to put their app. So it's going to be easy to get your apps there if you want to put them there. And with Windows 10, Microsoft is moving toward that one operating system experience. And there are already things you can do with a Windows Phone that you can't do with anything else.
Yep.
I love that little Beamer app, so I can take the screen on my phone and put it to my PC. We were talking about, I was actually doing a System Center presentation the other day, and a guy showed me how to, he said, watch on my Windows phone or watch on my Windows 10 desktop as I tell my phone to turn on its hotspot through Bluetooth, so I can tether. Windows Phone is already clever, so the hardware's coming along, the operating system's coming along. There's going to come a point like Surface where everybody stands up and says, "Oh my, it's arrived." Because what was happening, this time 2 years ago with Surface.
They were taking a fairly sizable hit, a $1 billion write-down on Surface RT, and it was getting a lot of bad press.
Yeah, and now people are stumbling, over themselves to get Surface Pro 3s. We've got a Surface Pro with a cheaper price point and colored pens.
Surface 3, yeah.
So was that really the tipping point for you when they came out with the Surface 3 and you could get a pen, that matched the color of your keyboard, etc.? Was it
I want a nice pink pen that matches my lippy.
They're swinging for the fences with the cool factor. So
the Surface 3 is, I guess, aimed at students and academics and whatever else. And look, it's a bit of fluff. Chicks dig
sure. But it gives you an alternative to an iPad Mini price wise, right? There's a little. It's in the neighborhood, maybe a shade more.
Yeah.
But your kids can actually get something done. Now our biggest problem is who in our family can we give our Surface 3 Pro to so we can get our Surface Pro 3 to so we can get a Surface 4.
The number of people that have asked me lately, have you heard anything on Surface 4? In fact, I think someone may have mentioned during telephone call with, some folks from Microsoft. Can you tell us anything about Surface 4? And then somebody else was talking to someone who provides parts and said, "Can you tell us anything about Surface 4?" There's a lot of people asking about it. I don't know that it's going to drastically be different. And in fact, I think there was some leaked information up on, I may have seen it on therot.com, about the Surface 4 and specs. The hardware itself is the same size. The device is the same size. It'll just use the latest Intel chipset and
So the Broadwell processor, and the rumor on the street is they're going to make the announcement at the anniversary event on the 20th of May. So they're saying the new platform, they being the community that's out there watching all the leaks, says coming soon, and it does say Broadwell on board.
Yep.
And and aside from that, some specs, and then of course we know Windows 10 is on there. And Windows 10 is looking nice. I gotta say, most of what annoys me about Windows 8 is resolved in Windows 10. And I liked Windows, I like Windows 8.1, but I took my Surface Pro 3 to Windows 10, and I'm on the fast ring, so I'm getting everything as soon as it comes out. And I'm on build, I think, 10061 at this point.
You haven't gone to 7.9 yet.
Oh, that's because it's sitting beside me here, and I need to hit the upgrade button.
Okay, yeah. A lot of good bug fixes and some new features and bits and pieces in 10079. So.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, it's starting to feel cooked. For sure. And in 6.1, in the 5.6 build, I was having some new problems. In 6.1, they fixed a lot of that. I'm hoping 7.9 can iron out the last of it. But the way you can, the way you can dock your apps and split your screen up has gotten much smarter. The start menu makes it difficult to not find your app now.
Right.
Although I gotta say, the start menu to me doesn't feel like a start menu that's going to make this super easy for. Pardon me. That's going to make this. Frog in my throat there.
You right?
That's going. I don't think Grandma is going to look at Windows 10 and say, "Oh, I get this," because it looks just like Windows 7. Because it doesn't, but it's close enough that I think people are going to be able to connect the dots.
Yeah, I wonder how long it's going to take before we hear the term Frankenstein. Not that I think that it is, but it does seem to be something of a love child of, Windows 7 and Windows 8 laid down together, they kissed, and what was born was Windows 10.
And it just got weird, folks. Thank you, Dan.
You can trust that I'll take it there, but I'm not going to use the term bastard child because I actually think Windows 10 is a huge improvement over Windows 8, but it has that sort of some of the Windows 8 elements, the good bits, and the Windows 7 elements, again, the good bits. And what you end up with is a great OS.
There you go. What else did we have? So Microsoft announced some new Azure services. So SQLDB Elastic Database came out.
Yep.
To the world. So basically that's a pool of compute capacity, compute network storage, where you can deploy SQL databases. So you can take an unpredictable workload and create an environment in the public cloud where you have predictable cost.
Right.
So very important. I mean, SQL is the core workload. Let's face it. So they're making that easier to do. A few days ago, before build, they announced the services. The new services platform, so making it easier for people to publish apps running in Azure. We got the Android iOS announcement. Spartan got its name at last. So Project Spartan.
It did.
And the name is?
It's Microsoft Edge.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's surprisingly absent in terms of the rebrand in the latest build 10076. It still was Spartan as far as I could tell, but
Yeah. So I'm going to say that the Spartan guys, the Spartan folks, were focused on features, and they said we'll change the name in the later build. That's
yeah.
not the most important thing.
I liked the Spartan name though. I like the fact that Microsoft were embracing Halo as a naming convention.
Yeah.
With
It feels like
Cortana
Satya talked to the cool 20-somethings within Microsoft, and they got it around cool project nicknames now.
Yep. What, Project Othello wasn't cool enough?
It's pretty cool. So
It was pretty cool in 16th century London.
There you go. Yeah.
England. What else?
I think we just about hit the day one. The day one build announcements right there. So there were a few things that came out on day two.
Yep.
And suppose we should hit those quickly before we talk about Ignite.
Mm-hmm. Fire away.
So day two, Windows 10 gets demoed on Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Come on.
So the reason that's pretty cool is Microsoft is showing us that we can run Windows 10 in a tiny footprint. So Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out, because what did Microsoft tell us about Windows 10 on devices with screens smaller than, what was it, 8 inches?
Smaller than 7.99 inches.
There you go.
It's free.
Yeah, so we know where Microsoft is going with the Internet of Things, right? You want to be the go-to at that utility layer. Nobody will be using devices in the Internet of Things because it runs Windows 10. They'll be using it because it runs something cool.
Yep.
And Windows 10 makes it easy for you to publish apps everywhere. Mm-hmm. And Windows 10 runs on a tiny hardware footprint, as you would see with IoT devices, and it's free.
Did they announce that it's free?
Well, so they announced on the Windows 8.1 platform that it's free. So I'm gonna kind of hold my thumb to the wind and guess that they may pull something like that with Windows 10 as well. If they haven't officially, I think they should.
Well, and the only reason I ask that is that technically Raspberry Pi doesn't have a screen. So
that's true. That's true.
That's their way around the licensing. If they chose to actually sell it for $5, $10, $15, whatever it is, I think it would be a mistake for them to do that, given that the proliferation of Linux distros that are available for Raspberry Pi. It wouldn't make much sense for them to charge for it, but.
And they might want to charge for it if it brings something unique to the table, right? And I think right now we can say with reasonable certainty that it does with the universal app publishing capability. So as long as they're not asking, $50 for a copy of Windows that's going to run on a $75 device.
Yep.
It's Microsoft should get paid. So I think it's just like they're doing in Azure. They're building great features, but at the same time, the price is just headed toward the basement. So.
I like it. I wonder how much of a stretch in terms of this isn't the first time Microsoft have released a product that's designed for smaller devices or embedded devices. I mean, we've had Windows CE, we've had Windows Embedded and other iterations of or other variants of Windows that are designed for those smaller footprint and smaller platform devices. So. I think it's a natural stepping stone for Microsoft to venture down this path. The other thing it does do is it shows Microsoft hasn't jumped off ARM. Microsoft is still developing for ARM. What it's not doing is developing for Windows RT. Dare we say?
We're not developing a crippled operating system for ARM. We're properly supporting ARM. So
yes.
Good for them. And your Surface RT can stay in the drawer to make more space for your Surface Pro 4.
Yeah. They have announced that they will be updating the RT, but not with Windows 10. It'll be like a Windows 8.5. something like
Yeah,
that.
there you go.
Kind of like they did for those that remember Windows Phone 7. You weren't able to upgrade to Windows Phone 8, but what you did get was Windows Phone 7.5.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So,
Yeah, so a step in the all steps in the right direction. So another cool thing they announced on day 2 was support for GitHub Enterprise for Azure. So Microsoft has their own source control
yep.
in Visual Studio Online, which is the as a service version, and then you've got Team Foundation
TFS.
System on-prem.
Yep.
If you've never used GitHub, so I use GitHub inside Visual Studio where I do most of my PowerShell scripting these days, and I don't do all of my PowerShell scripting in Visual Studio and I'm using Visual Studio 2013,
Mm-hmm.
And the PowerShell integration I downloaded from some developer who posted PowerShell integration for Visual Studio up onto the TechNet gallery,
Yep.
and it works well enough that I dev there, and it gives me, the ability to highlight some code, test it. I see the output in a screen, a pane down at the bottom of my screen.
Yep.
But I use GitHub, and I use GitHub for a couple of reasons. So I've got a Visual Studio, subscription. I've checked some stuff in there, etc. But I use GitHub for a couple of reasons. So I work for a software company. I like to stay abreast of, what people are using, and GitHub is the most widely used source code repository in the world. What sold me on GitHub beyond that was that it allows me to work offline. I don't have to be online to get to my code. I can have a branch running locally there, and when I get connected, I can check in.
Yep.
But it scales in such a way, it's kind of like snapshots for your code. So GitHub scales in such a way with large code bases with many branches that it's mind-blowing. And I'm going to point you to Microsoft's announcement for GitHub support, and I'm talking to you, IT Pro, so I'm not just talking to devs, okay? Because I'm an IT Pro just like the rest of you guys. I write a lot of PowerShell. I write C# slowly and with great difficulty, and with lots of references online. Kind of taking myself back in that direction. There was a time where I wrote a fair bit of VB.net in my IT Pro life. So kind of picking up that, de facto .net language now. But GitHub is great. It's free, and you will find there is even so you can go out to Bitbucket, which Microsoft supports, and you can set up to 5 of your own GitHub repositories for free. And there's a book by I believe it's released by Apress is the publisher. It's a publisher we've all seen. I'm going to pull it up here and put it in the show notes. But there's a GitHub Pro book, free. It is it's actually out on github.com/ProGit. So I'll put the link out there. So it's legit free ebook.
Good, nice.
And all you need to do is read the first 3 chapters. In fact, the author says if you're new and you want to get the basics, read the first 3 chapters, you're good to go.
Cool.
So check it out.
That'll go up in the show notes, will it?
Yeah, and if you're not writing your PowerShell scripts in Visual Studio, absolutely download it and go get the PowerShell add-in for Visual Studio. It's impressive, and you can connect right into GitHub from Visual Studio, so you can check your scripts into source.
Nice.
Straight from there, and then you never lose a script again.
Is there any... I'm just trying to... Actually, I'm going to ask the question because I don't know the answer, because I've never bothered to look, but is there any integration with the PowerShell ISE that you're aware of for anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's something that probably should change. I haven't seen anything that comes to mind.
No,
so I'm going to throw the PowerShell tools for Visual Studio down there that you'll need to get. I was just actually looking to see if there's a VSO or a get.
Right.
For PowerShell ISE, I don't see anything. If there is, I suspect it's going to be third party and for for some cost. Well, here we go. So Power Gist, source control for PowerShell ISE with GitHub Gist. So I'll throw a link there.
All right.
And I should look at that. I haven't seen that one, so that I'm scared that might drive me back to the ISE. I really think IT pros need to force themselves to develop in Visual Studio, to do scripting in Visual Studio. Yep. I'm an IT pro. I'm scripting in Visual Studio. I think we should all be preparing for that world where I think we will arrive.
Look, certainly from a source control and versioning and etc., central repository, all these sorts of things when you're working within an organization and sharing scripts is hugely beneficial. Of course, sadly, not everybody can afford to buy an MSDN subscription or one's provided, particularly as IT pros.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. So you can use some free versions, and I haven't. And to be fair,
yep.
Dan's playing devil's advocate here, and he's right. I don't know if the Visual Studio integration tools will work with the Express versions. I'm gonna check out of one eyeball here while we're talking.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a good point. So I just use Visual Studio from my MSDN sub, which is also where I derive my Azure capacity for development. So
yep. There are many tools out there, and there's always ways around. If you are using Git, you can always synchronize Git with a local file store, and therefore if you're making modifications to PowerShell scripts, you can open them from your local Git store, which will synchronize up. There's always ways of mashing together your own development environment using freely available tools if you don't have access to Visual Studio, I guess. Do you know whether the PowerShell stuff is available via NuGet?
I can't believe you're going there. You're reading my mind. So I actually went to see if you could get it from Chocolatey.
Okay.
And you can. So Choco space install space Power Gist.
There you go.
So yeah. And and the same guy that happened to post that has a nice little bit here for automating DevBox creation with Chocolatey, PowerShell, DSE, and Azure IS. So he's
nice.
I really dig this post here.
You're cutting and pasting those into the show notes as we speak, aren't you?
Fast and furious, yes.
Good man. Good man.
What were we talking about? We were talking about day 2 announcements, yes?
We were, yes. Yeah. Well, did we... We may have actually whizzed through those already. Were there any others?
I'm just popping over there to look at day 2 announcements again. Yeah, the day 2 announcements, I would be fair to say, were thin compared to day 1. They had to get all of the crazy stuff that would drive everybody insane. So when the noise died down from how impressed everybody was with HoloLens, it took a day before anybody could wrap their brain around anything else. I think.
You are right. Even out to day 3, HoloLens was the topic of conversation, I guess. One thing that kind of slipped through the gaps, unless, again, you read through tech blogs, were the release dates for Windows. What Microsoft have stated is that it won't be they're talking June, July time, I think. But it's not going to be in June. It'll be Windows 10, Windows 10 for phone, Windows 10 for tablet, Windows 10 for Xbox. It's going to be a staggered release of... and it's going to happen over the course of several months, where they'll release more than likely Windows 10 for desktop first, and then other devices and platforms will follow in the future. So anyone who was hoping to get their grubby little mitts on, some of the Xbox One streaming services, for instance, you're going to have to wait, to be able to stream your games to to your PC from your Xbox One, you'll probably have to wait a little bit, but that's okay. Which I guess leads into the fact that Microsoft's original announcement around HoloLens was that it would be available within the Windows 10 timeframe. They still haven't given any release dates, but one would only assume that it's going to be much later in the year.
Oh, you know what, Dan? There's one. No, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until we talk about Ignite to tell you about this one. There's one other very cool thing.
All right. I can't wait.
So I had somebody call me from the Build conference. I'm working on a project that I can't talk about, and somebody called me from the Build conference and told me something. But in the course of that conversation, they said, "Oh, and this happened too." And the "oh, and this happened too" actually happened to be really big news for IT Pro. So we'll catch up with that on the Ignite side here in just a bit.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to do before we get onto this little nugget of information that you're going to share?
You know, I think we have. I think we've wiped out the Build announcements. Those will be in the show notes. The Build Day 1 and Day 2 announcements. I'm just going to point you guys over to point you all over to the nextweb.com.
Thank you, good sir.
Yeah, because they did a really good job of just piling those together. There's no sense for us rehashing.
Agreed.
Their good work. So Dan and Pete and Ignite.
I'm intrigued. Tell me.
So, you know, we heard a lot of noise starting months ago, right? Oh, Ignite's going to be a marketing conference. Blah blah blah. We always hear those things from not just, you know, crazy rumor mill type people. You hear those sorts of statements from people that we know and you know that I respect. And I think that, you know, at any Microsoft conference where new things are coming and Microsoft controls the message, it's fair. Yeah, there's going to be some marketing stuff, right? I mean, they're paying for it. They want you to see what they have coming. But at the same time, we've heard some really important announcements, like next generation you know, stuff that we really need to be concerned about. So a few days ago, well, it's been a few weeks now, I think, to be fair, we heard about Nano, and the article that talked about Nano, more importantly, said Nano is going to run on Hyper-V, and Nano will be where Microsoft supports containers. And I watched a guy deploy an instance of Nano in, gosh, I don't know, 3 or 5 or 7 minutes or something, some ridiculously short amount of time.
Yep.
And his image was 93% smaller than a typical Windows image, so it was tiny. You know, containers are the future. Containers are the new VM, is what it comes down to.
We're talking the sort of Dockerized type containers here, or? Yeah,
so Microsoft will have their own container-based offering is what we intuit from that, I think. There is a Docker for Windows client that was released, but you know, Microsoft's going to support containers and not just Docker. You know, and there are some other companies out there in the world that do container-based technology. And I can think of a couple. I'm not going to mention their names for what I'm about to say. For those, you know, third parties in the world that are out there building container-based technology to run on Windows, I think those folks need to be looking at maybe a migration focus. You know, taking apps from, you know, Windows 2012 and previous and moving it into the container world.
Yep.
To try to be a few months ahead of Microsoft, because I don't think you're going to beat Microsoft to the platform here. They are going to be the fabric of containers, and they will have something native container-wise, and Nano is what this article says. I'll post this article in the show notes, of course. But I absolutely believe that you know, that Nano is one of the most important things you can focus on at Ignite this year. You know, certainly Microsoft announced that the new services fabric. I think you need to go over and have a look at that as an IT pro, but I think Nano is a place where you need to go spend some time and kind of hear where Microsoft thinks they're going.
Yep.
PowerShell DSE, there are a couple of sessions there. If you're not already pretty well into the swing there, you need to go take a look at that and see where they're going. Certainly I did some work there in the 100 days of DevOps with PowerShell, where we did some work on DSC. But you absolutely want to have a look at Nano, I think, first and foremost. Yep. But System Center sessions. So there was actually a page that went up, I don't know, a few days ago, and I think Microsoft published it. It said System Center sessions at Ignite, probably in response to the noise from the community that we need to know what's up with System Center. So definitely some System Center content at Ignite as well. I'm actually just going to pull up that page here. So the first thing that comes to mind was a dashboarding session for Ops Manager aficionado. So I mentioned that to aficionados. I mentioned that to you, Dan, because I know you're an Ops Man guy in your heart, and that's where I got my start as well.
So is that native dashboarding or utilizing third-party? I'm going to guess
from the sound of it, it looks like native dashboarding. Okay. So yeah, we all figure that maybe if it's dashboards, maybe Squared Up is working their way in there. If you're talking about dashboards from more of a map angle, then Sawvision's going to be in there. But so you're going to have the deployment focus sessions with Johan and Kent. If you're a config-man person, there's going to be a lot of focus on WAP, so Windows Azure Pack, that is. So that's your on-prem private cloud approach. So WAP includes that deploys to Hyper-V, gives you your Azure-like self-service, gives you the service management automation engine. What else did I bookmark here? Docker for Windows Server. I think if you're looking to the future, you need to go just watch that. And that looks to be a level 200 session around the benefits of containers. And bear in mind that all of these sessions, I believe, if it's running like Build, with Build they had sessions coming out like 24 to 48 hours after they they complete. So potentially. The same thing happens here.
Fingers crossed. I mean, there's generally a 24-hour delay between session recording and it being live, with the exception of the keynotes.
Yeah. What else did I see?
Though they were broadcasting live a decent amount of content from Ignite.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, there was some stuff streaming over at Channel 9.
Yeah.
Deep dive into Azure IaaS. That's going to be run by a couple of Microsoft product team folks. I think you've got to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Which sets the stage for the other. And oh, by the way, there's this thing. And I was already aware of this template capability, but I heard some other direction around this. So Microsoft has templates, a template language for Azure. It's JSON templates,
right,
that will allow you to deploy from the Azure command line, from PowerShell, from the preview portal UI. So you can define an entire environment in a template. You can define a virtual network with many subnets, etc.
Nice.
And what this is going to be, when I look at this, I don't have to guess for a second, but what I heard was explained at Build is this is going to be your platform for everything. If you're an IT pro deploying infrastructure at a corporation, if you're somebody building something, that you want to sell to customers, if you need to deploy virtual machines, this is how you're gonna do it.
Yep.
So, and then we'll see about that, right? So not everything sticks. This looks like it has legs. It's Microsoft's own little JSON vocabulary, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And I feel like JSON is the new XML. Your templates in WAP are JSON.
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be a developer to build those. There's actually a way to build templates in a UI that you can pick up on open source. It was written by a Microsoft guy.
Okay.
From the CAT team, if memory serves. So, but JSON looks to be the way it's going. When I'm building multi VM environments, I tend to be using an XML definition file where I can list all of the things that I want to deploy and pull them out.
Yep.
So JSON seems to be a new,
the flavor
kind of the
month.
new XML. It's
Yep.
XML's younger, cooler brother, I guess.
It's XML's younger, cooler, hipper, bearded brother.
He's got one of those beards that are so annoying.
Yeah,
right?
those hipster beards.
Oh my gosh. So, what does JSON stand for? Is one of those things that always comes up. JavaScript Object Negotiation. So it's a lightweight data interchange format that makes it, it's easy for humans to read and write. So I will say that, okay? So I'm not sure what sort of degree you have to write XML intuitively and without referring back to documentation from time to time, but I didn't take that class, apparently. So JSON is designed to be a bit easier. I'll actually post just a link over to json.org, but you're going to find Microsoft using JSON with increasing frequency. So I would call that the future. But you need to look at the Azure template catalog out there, because Microsoft have put a catalog of templates out there that make it easy.
Yep.
To do that kind of deployment. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Nice. All right. Anything else, good sir?
Oh, let's get back to the
Ignite.
See, I was only up to Tuesday, so Wednesday is another nano session. I thought looked good. The future of Windows Server starts now. That's going to be a level 200-ish.
Yep.
Okay, so Thursday. Be there. Using desired state config to deploy SQL. So if you want to get into a PowerShell DSC session.
Yep.
And you've got, I suggest you focus on the new stuff, earlier in the week. If you want to learn DSC, go do a hands-on lab or two in the lab area, and then go to this Thursday session on desired state config to deploy SQL. So go learn how to deploy something, right? So you need to learn about pull mode, which takes about 15 minutes. You need to spend an hour and a half kind of playing around and getting those basics out of the way over in the hands-on lab area. Then go, learn how to deploy the most common back-end component for every workload that we run in the data center, private or public. So there's an Azure Pack session, and then, of course, the Ignite celebration. So, what's cool about Ignite this year?
Go on.
You have two parties, more or less, in my book. So we have the closing party on Thursday. But Cinco de Mayo is,
of course,
is Tuesday.
Yes. Well, and let's not forget that there's also International Star Wars Day on the Monday, May the 4th.
Oh wow, you are a huge nerd. I didn't know that.
Oh, what? Seriously? After how many years you're only just realizing?
So a mutual friend of ours actually started a Star Trek podcast.
He did, yes.
And he's been noticed by a prominent Star Trek, a prominent Trekkie blogger.
Oh, awesome.
This guy wrote, and the guy's following, I was looking at him, man, a lot of Trekkies followed this dude, but he wrote an article talking about his favorite new podcasts. And our friend Bill's podcast made number 2.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, because when I see somebody start a Star Trek podcast, I say, okay. but the guy said, they have very relevant guests. They have some names, so and I actually saw Bill was talking to the other Bill. So Bill is always the Bill in my book, but he was talking to the other Bill, William Shatner. I think really? about maybe coming on to his podcast, but
that is.
And I'm not sure that Bill Shatner is going to be on this podcast, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. No. Good on you, Billiam. if you're listening, which he probably is actually. He is a fan of our podcasts. But congratulations. In fact, I'm going to look it up because, dare I say it, I haven't actually listened to his podcast. Sorry, Bill. But now I'm going to try and find it.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. Well, he'll point you to the article and so forth. Just go run down Bill's Facebook page, and you'll find where he points you over to that article. I thought that was pretty cool, though. And Bill even has his own Star Trek action figure now. It's Bill in a Star Trek character, one of the expendable character formats. So meaning yes, he's wearing a red shirt. And if you think about that, when we think about the movie The Sixth Sense,
yep.
We feel like maybe M. Night Shyamalan invented something there. What was the key color that was supposed to tip you off in The Sixth Sense? It was red.
Red.
Whenever you saw red, that was the precursor for something. That was his foreshadowing.
Okay.
So we can say, so some people might say M. Night Shyamalan, came up with that. I can look back at Star Trek and say, you know what? I know where you got that, dude. You borrowed that from the 60s.
Indeed.
Recycling.
Sorry, now I'm trying to find... Come on, Bill.
And just for the record, for Cinco de Mayo, I'm going to put a link in there because it's not a celebration of Mexican Independence Day. So if you don't know what Cinco de Mayo is, I'm pointing you to the Wikipedia page. You're welcome.
Sorry, did you say it's not a celebration of Mexico's independence?
It is not. It is a date observed to commemorate the Mexico Army's unlikely victory over French forces at the Battle of Puebla, May 5th, 1862.
I always thought it was.
Cinco de Mayo is sometimes mistaken to be Mexicans' Independence Day, the most important national holiday of Mexico, which is celebrated on September 16th.
Okay.
Yeah, not just you, Dan, everybody.
Okay.
But you remember, so I'm a Texan, right? So I live in Houston. We have family down in Corpus Christi, which is about 2 hours from Mexico by car.
Yep.
Many of our friends and acquaintances are not just descendants of people from Mexico, but we have good friends and neighbors who are they are Mexican, and over here on green cards, and actually they both have PhDs. I can honestly say that two of the smartest people I know are actually from Mexico.
Sure.
And PhD in very socially redeemable things at that. But so I'm sort of immersed in the Mexican culture in Corpus Christi, where you can also incidentally get the best Mexican food in the United States if you're a Mexican food fan.
I'll put my hand up for that one.
Yeah. I tell you, I find it hard to find Mexican food in Houston, Texas, where we have a thriving Mexican American community, than versus Corpus.
You should try getting decent Mexican food in Melbourne then.
It just doesn't happen, does it?
There's a couple of good restaurants, but it's Aussie Mexican. It's
No, when you come over, Dan, I'll treat you to some great Mexican food right after I take you to the Outback Steakhouse, so you can have some proper Aussie food.
I'm going to refrain from using any profanities on this podcast, Pete.
I thought you might.
I'm even going to refrain from flipping you the bird. And
there you go.
I've been to an Outback Steakhouse. Oh, dear.
I mean, I'm not going to digress into the video around Aussies eating Outback for the first time. I'll point you to that one.
I may have seen that as well, to be honest. Just really, really, really quickly, for those that are so inclined, trekgeeks.com, TREKGEEKS.com. That is Bill's podcast. Go and have a listen. I'm going to start subscribing there. 11 episodes deep. You can also follow them at Trek Geeks on Twitter. Little cross promotion for our good buddy Bill.
There you go. So my coverage of Ignite is a bit more DevOps focused. And by DevOps I mean IT pros looking to the future, to connecting with devs, thinking about continuous deployment, streamlining.
Yep.
As Ricky Bobby said in Talladega Nights, I want to go fast. And that's what DevOps is about. It's about going fast, but safely so, amongst other things. So of course you want to hit the keynote. I'm going to be streaming it to the mobile device of my choice as I head to the venue. You need to poke in on the Docker for Windows Server session. You need to look at just about anything Nano. There are a couple of good Nano sessions there.
Yep.
Make sure you look for Snover's embargoed session. So he did a little 3-minute video intro. He said he has like 3 embargoed sessions that they can't even talk about.
You'll need to look them up when you get there.
That's what he said. He said get to the venue and look them up. There's a platform vision and strategy session, 1 of 7. It said at 3:15 on Monday afternoon. I think some of those platform vision and strategy. I'm going to pop in on the first one and see what I think and decide. I'll probably wind up downloading, at least some of the next 6. But there's a platform vision and strategy series I think you need to at least cast an eye to kind of get the key bits of what's coming.
Yep.
You need to pop in on PowerShell DSC and see where that's headed. And I think at that point you've got a full week, coupled with some labs, coupled with some good eats in Chicago, man. So you're in the largest, I believe, the McCormick. The venue there is the largest conference venue in the United States or North America.
Okay. Lots of deep pan pizzas.
Yeah, it's a deep dish is Chicago style pizza, right? There are a couple of good gastropubs, lots of great steak if you're a fan of red meat. Chicago's kind of known as one of those places where you get great steak.
You're making me hungry now, Pete.
Yeah, I hear you. So, yeah, McCormick.
I only wish I was going. But sending you along instead.
So Dan sends Pete instead, his messenger.
Yes, you are to eat steak. Go forth and eat steak, my friend.
There you go. I'll take one to the team.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, I think that's the good stuff. We're a little long in the tooth already.
Yeah, I was looking. We're an hour and 12 minutes in or thereabouts, give or take a few seconds. So we can probably wrap this one up, put a bow on it, and call this one done.
I think so.
We will have by the time this comes out for your either listening or viewing pleasure, we should have the show notes up at insidethemicrosoftcloud.com. If you are watching this, hello, I'm going to give you a wave. You will notice I've included a hashtag, and that is InsideMSCloud. Moving forward, what we're going to be doing, fingers crossed, is actually broadcasting live. We're going to find a suitable time that will allow you, if you are so inclined, to sit back, relax, pop a beer, and watch Pete and I and our plethora and many guests talk about Cloud and System Center, alternating weekly. So when it is inside the Microsoft Cloud, hashtag, send us a tweet with the hashtag InsideMSCloud. You can do that at any time. Ask us a question. We'll be sure to cover that off during the show. Your tweets will be potentially broadcast live, so keep them clean. But it's a way for you to interact with Pete and I and our guests whilst the show is going on. Likewise, if you have a point to make, a question to ask, a correction to provide us with, send it to #InsideMSCloud, and we will be sure to pick that up and give you the kudos that week or the next week, or whenever it may be.
There you go.
Well, sir, what I haven't done, and it's been a little remiss of me to do this, I haven't actually put your Twitter handle on your lower third. You'll see that if you choose to watch the video, but tell people who may be new to this fine establishment of ours how they can find you.
You will find me on Twitter at PZERGER. That's effectively my first initial and my last name.
There we go.
And blogging and a bit of tweeting as well, along with a few others over at Inside MS Cloud.
There we go. Any news? Have we got a book launch yet?
Coming in May. So we're down to the final stages of editing. We finally had to put a stake in the ground and promise ourselves not to write about any more new Microsoft announcements. There are just so many that
Yep.
we're going to put a stake in the ground, get it published, and we're going to turn around and immediately begin working on V2.
Yep.
So just trying to see if things level out to the point that we can actually just do measured updates.
Sure.
So we'll see.
No, makes sense. Makes sense.
You got it.
Ah, dear. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Dan Kregor. That's pretty much just like this little bit down the bottom here, DANKREGOR. You can find us at IPN.TV. Follow us on Twitter, the network that is at Inside Podcast. Send us a tweet using that Twitter handle. We're yet to finalise a schedule in terms of our weekly recording. It will be a scheduled thing. We will try and do it on the same day at the same time every week. That's not always the case, but we will have a schedule up on IPN.TV where you can go and grab a copy of the iCal, throw it up into your own calendar. Do what you need to do. But we do have some great guests lined up coming to you in future episodes with some fantastic topics. We would encourage you to send us some information if there's a specific topic you want to cover, for instance, like containers, giving you background and detailed information about what a container is and how it technically works. Let us know. And we will.
So Dan, I already have a thread started with somebody who knows containers, so I'll be looking to drag into the discussion with you there a nano expert. So
good man.
I promise you good things from Ignite this week, including
yes.
And I don't know how you're going to work them in, but because I think we've got 4 months laid out, so we'll have to look at how how you publish, how you prioritize based on availability and all that. But
well, we will try and give everybody, our good listeners, enough heads up before we record, so that if you do want to, if there is a particular episode that you're interested in watching live because you want to provide feedback or have questions, we'll be sure to get you that information in a timely manner so that you can clear your schedule. But I think for now, Mr. Zerger, we can call this one quits. What do you reckon?
Sounds like a plan. Appreciate it, Dan.
Everyone, thank you for watching, or listening as it were. This has been the very first episode of Inside the Microsoft Cloud. As we said, stay tuned during the week coming up. Throughout Ignite, we will have a few episodes that we will be releasing. And hopefully we'll have some great guests for you, but we will definitely have some great information for you. So thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. And we're clear.
All right. Man.
Stop.